Hi, I'm Sarah Wilson-Soki. This is Tips and Tricks for Teaching. If you've ever been to an FTEP or ASSET event, then you know that those are very useful, but this is designed to be different and in some ways easier than a typical ASSET or FTEP event about teaching. There are a lot of university resources in teaching, all of which are very valuable, but you may have to register for events, spend time attending, and then think about how to redesign your class. You might be asked to even rethink your pedagogical philosophy and your basic approach to teaching. In other words, you're being asked to invest a lot of time and effort often to make any change in your teaching. So this is none of that. This is designed to introduce very easy and simple things that you can try in a single class with minimal preparation. Some of these are things that you can do on the fly in the classroom when your normal tactic isn't getting the reaction you want. And this is important because sometimes small and even low-tech changes can make a big difference in how well a class goes. And we don't always have time to undertake a complete overhaul of our teaching or our courses. So what follows are 3 slides. Each slide has 3 tips, generally from the easiest to the most involved, a Canvas tip about how to integrate Canvas with these techniques, and finally a link to more information. And that's it. I would suggest picking out 1 or 2 new things to try and see how they work in your class, see if it works for you, if it has the effect that you were hoping. The idea is that this is low cost and low stakes and potentially high reward because it can make some of your classes go better, get more students engaged, and just generally mix things up in the classroom for you. So I'll start with discussion techniques. And as we all know, just asking questions to the class can be good, it can be great, but it can also get boring, and there's some common problems with it. Only a handful of students may respond. It might be the same students every time, and so there's some easy ways to mix up your discussion techniques if you're not getting the responses or level of involvement that you want. The first, which is obvious, and I think many of us have probably used some version of this, is to have students get into partners or small groups depending on the size of the class, and have them answer the question that way and then go around to the groups and solicit answers. There's a few specific suggestions I have for how to use this kind of technique. One is to almost always, I would suggest making them move around. So if you have small groups, have them count off, say 1 through 6, and then all the 1s find each other, all the 2s find each other, and that way they have to move around. It gets them a little more engaged. I would give them a specific amount of time, and not much time. I would say 3 to 5 minutes max, because you'll be able to hear when they start veering off topic into other things. I would also suggest that after that set amount of time, that you go to each group to get their answers, but that you may intersperse the group answers with short bursts of lecture in between, so that you can use the small groups or partners to keep the momentum of your lecture going while getting different students to be involved. While they're actually discussing, I would recommend moving around the classroom while you talk so that you can talk to individual groups. If you have time, I would suggest physically sitting down with a group as opposed to just standing over them. It creates a different dynamic. You can also consider having a paper handout that everyone has to fill out, and you can collect that paper handout and use it to grade in-class participation, or you can use that handout as a way for them to take structured notes on the lecture or structured notes on their responses that are in the groups. So you can either have them keep that piece of paper or not. And this is something that if you're asking questions and you're not getting the responses you want, you can shift to partners in small groups and you'll get more of the class engaged. It's an obvious tip, but it's one that can be very effective in getting more people involved in a classroom discussion. The second technique is a puzzle technique, and this is a variant of the first, but the idea with the puzzle technique is you have a big overarching question that you break into individual parts, and each group has a different part of the puzzle, so to speak, to answer. This is very much in keeping with the kind of what we call a flipped classroom sometimes, in that they, as a class, are trying to solve a puzzle and generate content that you will then test them on. So you would do the same thing as in the first strategy, break them into small groups, give them each questions. They could have a handout or not. You're moving around the room while they're discussing. And then once they've had time to discuss or answer their part of the puzzle, you start putting it all together, and you can lecture in between, getting answers from the different groups, so you can use it as a way to break up a lecture. The third comment that I have here, tip that I have, is that with both number 1 and 2, you can generate original content from students and emphasize to them that their answers and the content that they're generating are things they should be taking notes on, things that will be covered on an exam, things that are an important part of the content of the class. And there's a few specific ways you can do this. The very low-tech way is just to write things on the blackboard or the whiteboard, right? Whatever their answers are, you emphasize the importance of it by writing it on the board. You can have them create in class or out of class a shareable Google Doc. This is very easy, very low-tech way. Most of them are familiar with shareable Google Docs, and that's something that they can go back and reference online, that they can add to, that they can edit. I'm happy to answer any questions about that if you have any. You could have the groups do quick in-class presentations that they just prepare in class. So it's nothing out of class, but they come to class, they're in a group, they have a part of a puzzle or a specific question, and someone from the group has to give a short presentation. A more involved way would be to have them write short little reports or reactions that you then put into an edited volume for them and tell them that this is the basis of questions on an exam or some kind of assignment. I do this with country reports. I put their country reports for a class into what I call an edited volume, and then generate original content that way. If you'd like more information about Canvas, then I have a couple suggestions. Canvas has several functions that are useful, that could be useful for both in-class and out-of-class techniques. One is there's a collaborations function where they can create shared documents within Canvas. There's a chat function where if everyone in the class has to be online and you can chat with each other like in a chat room. There's a discussions function, which is just really functions at the most basic level, like a simple blog. So you post something, they can comment and they can reply to comments, they can like comments. It's really, I've found it very easy to use. If you'd like more information, I've given there's a hyperlink to an article here that will be available online, and you can see along with this, there will be uploaded the PDF of the article where you can access this link too, about all different kinds of discussion techniques that you could use in class, more than you would want in a short presentation, but all different kinds of things to try and ways to structure a discussion. Next, I'll talk about mini simulations. So mini simulations, I think, can be very effective and are really easy to do. You can also do these on the fly in a class if you're not getting the kind of participation or reaction you had hoped to get from just an open-ended kind of discussion question. So my first suggestion is that you can use either hypothetical or real-world scenarios or some combination thereof. You can preview the class before that you're going to do this, or you can do it all in one class. You don't have to have a lot of setup to do this. And so some examples of this, I think, will make it the clearest how you can use this. Whatever topic you're teaching on, the idea with a mini simulation is just that you assign certain students or certain groups of students to take on certain roles and then think about how they would react to a situation if they were put in that role. So you could have some groups be parties and some represent certain demographics of voters, have the parties come up with an agenda, have the voters ask them questions in a kind of little campaign period, and then have voting at the end of it. And you can do this just in the class, have them count off 1 through 6, and everyone finds their respective group. 2 groups are parties, the others are maybe young people, old people, people in rural areas, people in urban areas. And you just ask them to consciously think for a moment about what they might do in that situation, right? So it's really, I say mini simulation, but it's just an applied example in class, and you ask them as a thought experiment to pretend to be in this role. You can get as involved or as simple as you want to with a mini simulation. So you can do it over the course of several classes, you can draw it out, or you can use it as, you know, a 15-20 minute exercise to break up a class. You could have parties forming coalitions, you could have an authoritarian leader versus some opposition groups. Maybe the opposition groups have to decide what strategies to take. If you're thinking about normative questions and you're not thinking about maybe a specific, you're not doing a more empirical emphasis, you could have them defend the position of different authors. It's a bit more like a debate, but you could have them take the position of authors and apply it to a real world situation, or think about how different authors would respond to each other. That's similar to the dynamic of a mini simulation. On Canvas, what I would highlight is that you can make assignments on Canvas and put them in groups and have group assignments through Canvas. You can either have Canvas assign students to groups for you, or you can manually assign who goes into which group, so that you could set this up out of class or before class. You could use that group assignment function in class. They would need to have their laptop or a smartphone to do it. But that's a really, I think, advantageous aspect of Canvas that you can integrate with this. And there's a couple of articles about the value of simulations and one about someone's experience with a simulation in a political science class and how it worked, if you're interested in finding out more information. Current events coverage is the last thing that I'll talk about today. A lot of us want to incorporate current events into our classes, and there are different strategies for how you can do that. One that I found works well for me is that I'll post a couple of articles a short period before class. You require one comment on that article online and one response. And you can do that in an online discussion format very easily in Canvas, and it's very easy to grade in Canvas that they've completed that assignment. So you have on the syllabus that you'll post articles for this day and that they're required to respond to them, and they're required to make a response to one other person. And that's an easy way to integrate current affairs. Another way is to have them follow one or two specific news sources, like check the front page of the New York Times or the BBC or The Economist or whatever news source you want them to follow. A third way is to have students pick a current news article about a topic that they discuss, and you can make it a requirement that students have to pick a day to choose an article that they'll talk to the class about, or you can have quizzes at the beginning of class where you'll say, I want you to have read a current news article and I'm going to ask you to talk about it on this quick reading quiz at the beginning of class, or something like that. But so these are three different ways that you can think about trying to incorporate current events coverage. On Canvas, the discussions function is very useful. You can also do online quizzes through Canvas where you could have them read some current events articles and answer a short online quiz to ensure that they've actually read it. It's pretty easy to post videos on Canvas. You can do it under the modules function, and you can have groups of subjects, and you can post a short news video, and there's even really cool ways that you can annotate the video and then also integrate a quiz into the video if you want to get more involved and do that. The New York Times has 50 ways to teach with current events, so if you want more information, there's a link here to that New York Times article about how you might consider teaching with current events. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope it's been useful for you. I would welcome any input or feedback that you have about what kinds of tips would be useful for you in the future. Thank you.